Welcome to ANEC Sports' coverage of the Indiana High School Girls Basketball Offseason Series. My name is Sam Frick. I'm the founder and editor at Around the Northeast Corner, covering schools across Northeast Indiana and Elkhart County. We take a look at the Southern Wells Raiders representing the ACAC, and the last time they had a winning season up until this past season, you have to go back to the 2011-2012 season when they went 18-7 on the season and would win a sectional championship that season. Actually, 2012-13. I should take that back. So last time they had a winning season was actually 2012-2013. But in the years to follow that, you're talking 10 wins in 13-14, 11 wins in 14-15, both losing records, won 7 games in 15-16, 7 in 16-17, back to 11 games 17-18, 6 wins in 18-19, 4 in 19-20. 2020-21 also only had 4 wins. 6 wins in 21-22. 22-23 back to 7 wins. The year before that, 7 wins in 2023-24. This past season, Southern Wells won 16 games on the season. 16-8 on the season in Kyle Penrod's first season as the head girls basketball coach at Southern Wells. Keep this in mind that Kyle Penrod has been a coach at Southern Wells in previous years, but only on the boys' side prior to this season. And his first year on the girls' side led Southern Wells to a 16-win campaign, winning 3 conference games, which is an incredible feat for Southern Wells, considering the fact they have struggled in their conference for many years now. And they were a finalist in the ACAC tournament following the Bluffton, their county rivals. And then, unfortunately for Southern Wells, they ran into a very difficult first-round matchup against North Miami. They went down to, I believe it was, I can't even remember anymore. But the point being is, Southern Wells had a very successful season. Let's take a look at the season as a whole, which is 2024-25. Take a look at what happened this past season, and then look ahead for next season. Southern Wells opened the season on the road against Northfield on November 5th, and this was kind of a hint of what was to come for Southern Wells. They fell in a very competitive game at Northfield, 54-50. Northfield representing the TRC, and this was the first of 3 games on the road to begin the season. They would go on to win their next 2 games in dominant fashion, 63-22 at Cowan, 56-41 at Union City, 3 games in a span of 4 days. Then on November 12th, their home opener against Union Modoc, which that's a school in Randolph County. They defeated Union Modoc 54-31, and then spent the next 4 games on the road, 4 games on the road, and that would be a season high for Southern Wells, as the Raiders defeated Lakeland Christian 51-33, defeating Eastbrook 34-19. That's a rare victory for Southern Wells these days. Defeating Canterbury 69-26, and then defeating the Adams Central Flying Jets 56-39 to open ACAC play. I mentioned this in the Adams Central portion of the series, that this was a competitive game early on, but then Southern Wells, in Southern Wells fashion, pulled away in the second half with a dominant performance. And throughout the course of the season, Southern Wells' size, their rebounding, their scrappiness, their toughness on the defensive side really just suffocated a lot of these smaller schools throughout the course of the season for the Southern Wells Raiders. And a huge part of why Southern Wells was successful this year, other than they had a great defense, was their post play. They had 2 legitimate post players, one of which was Ashley Needler, who just recently signed to play college basketball at St. Francis in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We'll talk about Ashley Needler later, but the point being is Southern Wells had a pretty special group this past year, and they are going to return a lot, and we'll talk about that later on in the show. They would then play Bluffton on December the 7th in Bonito at the Raider Dome. Bluffton completely dominated the Southern Wells Raiders, 66-25. Southern Wells just could not hit anything on offense for Southern Wells, and then foul trouble for Ashley Needler became a huge problem for the Raiders. And then Bluffton had one of their more special teams they've ever had, going 22-3 on the season, win the ACAC outright in both the conference and in tournament play. Following that Bluffton game, 3 days later, they would host the Black Hawk Christian Braves with a 56-44 win against a solid Braves program, and then dominate the Heritage Patriots on the road 55-19. They would host Woodland 6 days later, fell a competitive contest to the Woodland Warriors 61-53. That was a winnable game for Southern Wells, and unfortunately, they just couldn't quite get it over the hump against the Woodland Warriors in that contest. A week later, actually over a week later, on December 28th, they would host Eastern Greentown and pull away with a 46-point win, 66-20, and then open the new year on January the 4th at Randolph Southern with a 65-50 win against Randolph Southern before falling to Daleville 3 days later at home, 46-40. Prior to ACAC tournament play, they would travel to South Adams on January the 10th with a 58-33 victory, and then opened ACAC tournament play by hosting the Adams Central Flying Jets. The Raiders were able to overcome a slow start with a fantastic third quarter and eventually pulled away with a 46-41 win, and then defeated Heritage 68-31 as the Southern Wells Raiders advance to the ACAC championship game, but their quest of their first ever ACAC tournament title was denied by the Bluffton Tigers in an 84-31 win for the Bluffton Tigers at South Adams, the most points ever scored by a single team in a championship game in ACAC tournament history, and Bluffton winning their first ever ACAC tournament title on their way to winning their first ever conference regular season championship. Coming out of ACAC tournament week, they would host Jay County on the 25th, fell 52-34 to the Patriots. Again, by this point, Kalina Reeves was out of the lineup. Ashley Nealon started to deal with a lower body injury. And unfortunately, the Raiders just kind of were limping into the playoffs as they would eventually lose 3 of their final 4 regular season games, as they also lost to Southwood 53-35, and then defeating West Dell on the road 67-25. Unfortunately, in the first round of sectionals, they played the North Miami Warriors in that contest and fell at the Tri-Central sectional 1A55 by the score of 36-25 in favor of North Miami, who would go on to play in semi-state. So kind of a nice run there for the North Miami Warriors, but Southern Wells' season came to an end at 16-8. Now let's take a look at some key departures and returnees for the Southern Wells Raiders. We first begin with, obviously, one of the most successful players they've ever had at Southern Wells in Ashley Nealon, who averaged 13 points per game, shot 50% from the floor, shot 53% from the foul line, 9-point rebounds, 1.5 assists, 2 steals per game for the senior Ashley Nealon, and now a St. Francis signee. Over the course of her career at Southern Wells, consistently Ashley Nealon was their go-to player. Even in their worst seasons in Ashley Nealon's career, she was their constant go-to player. And this year proved to be her most successful year yet as a basketball player, averaging 13 points and 9 rebounds per game. Throughout the course of the season, again, a constant force inside as a center for the Southern Wells Raiders, who also received first ACAC All-Conference nomination. For instance, against Randolph Southern, she had 27 points, 9 rebounds, 5 steals in that game against Randolph Southern, right? She had 14 rebounds and 19 points in the loss to Daleville, 16 points and 8 rebounds against South Adams. How about additional 10 rebounds and 4 points? She had foul trouble in that tournament game against the Jets, but still grabbed 10 rebounds nonetheless. How about the 16 rebounds against Jay County? 14 rebounds against Union City to go along with her 18 points. Can I go even further than this? How about 17 rebounds and 3 assists and 3 steals and a block and 15 points against Blackhawk Christian? It's just to show you, like, Ashley Needler and her accolades were very well deserved. And unfortunately for Southern Wells, they are going to miss their post players dearly. Because not only are they losing Ashley Needler, they are also losing Kenzie Patson, as she averaged 4.4 points per game, 34% from the floor, 54% from the foul line, 3.3 rebounds, 1.3 steals per game. Now, Patson didn't have the dominant numbers that Needler had for the Raiders. She did lead the team in blocks at 0.4 blocks per game. And late in the season, came up with some big performances late in the season, particularly in her final game where she had 8 points in the loss to North Miami. But even then, even go beyond that, you have the 11 points against Canterbury, 10 points against Adams Central in the regular season, not in the conference tournament. She had 9 rebounds against the Jets in the ACAC tournament, 5 offensive boards, by the way. She had, 6 rebounds against North Miami, 10 rebounds against Canterbury. So she still had some nice performances this season. Obviously, they weren't Ashley Needler numbers consistently, but even in portions, Kenzie Patson was a crucial part of Southern Wells' success in being able to score inside. Because believe me, Southern Wells' offensive shooting numbers were not impressive. So the fact that they were able to get a lot of rebounds and be able to score inside is a testament to their toughness and to their athletic talents in the post. Another player they're going to be graduating is Kalina Reeves. I mentioned that Kalina Reeves suffered a knee injury in the ACAC tournament. I believe that was actually against Heritage, to be exact. But nonetheless, Reeves averaged 7.4 points per game, shot 39% from the floor, led the team in three-point shooting at 31% from downtown, 58% from the foul line, 4.9 rebounds, 2.1 steals per game. Reeves was a constant force in that wing position for the Raiders as she led the way in three-point shooting, came up with timely baskets over the course of these past couple years for the Raiders, and especially this season. She had the monster 21-point performance against Union City, where she also drained 5 threes on 7 attempts. You also had the 11-point performance against Eastbrook, 20 points against Hamilton, 20 points against Heritage, excuse me. I almost said Hamilton there. And she made 4 threes in that game against the Heritage Patriots, the regular season meeting that was. She also grabbed 12 rebounds in the loss to Daleville, 9 rebounds. 9 rebounds against Southwood, 6 rebounds against Union City, 8 against Eastbrook, 8 against Adams Central in the regular season, 6 rebounds against Blackhawk Christian and Heritage, and 8 rebounds once again against Woodland. And keep in mind that they're graduating all 3 of their leading rebounders from this past season. That's going to be crucial because of next season. This team's going to have to be able to shoot the ball a little bit better. Now, the good news is Southern Wells does return some players. Now, to put this into perspective, Southern Wells is a 1A school. They are one of the smaller schools in this area. Bonito has struggled at times with enrollment. They have struggled with talent, staying at Southern Wells. A lot of talent these days at Southern Wells or in the Southern Wells area. They have been going to Bluffton these days. And so that is something we do pause for some concern because of recent trends with Southern Wells. That is always going to be a concern. However, with that being said, the Raiders do have a solid freshman class that are going to be sophomores next year. And one of which I should say, because Erica Bevins is actually a sophomore going to be a junior, But the one freshman they are going to bring back is Kaylee Davis. Davis averaged 7.6 points per game, shot 30% from the floor, 63% from the foul line, 3.5 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 3.3 steals per game. Kaylee Davis was extremely efficient in multiple areas. At times throughout her season, she became a constant offensive force. 13 points against South Adams, 13 against Heritage in the ACAC tournament, 12 points against Northfield, 11 against Westdale. She had the 12-point performance against Adams Central in the regular season, 12 against Eastern Greentown. And while Kaylee Davis has struggled to shoot the ball at times, especially from three-point land, Kaylee Davis does give you enough to show that I think there is some room to grow and maybe some upside is there for Kaylee Davis next year as maybe and potentially becoming their leading scorer for the Raiders. Again, because of that balanced offensive and defensive game, Davis was a dominant player in multiple areas beyond scoring. We're talking steals, 10 steals against Heritage, 6 against South Adams, 8 against Westdale. Constantly grabbing steals, forcing turnovers, get that transition game going for the Southern Wells Raiders. Rebounds, she can grab the boards as well. She had as many as, I believe it was 7, and that happened twice against Northfield and Eastbrook in that contest, in those two contests. The one thing you have to watch for Kaylee Davis is the turnovers. If she can cut down those turnovers, I think that will help as well in her offensive game. But obviously, Davis has potential to become one of Southern Wells' best players going into next season. Another one to watch is Erica Bevins, going to be a junior this season. Had a breakout sophomore season for the Southern Wells Raiders, as she led the team in free throw percentage at 66%. Bevins averaged 6.9 points per game, shot 27%, 23% from 3, 2.2 assists, 2 steals per game. Again, her offensive shooting numbers were not the best, but at times throughout the course of her season, she came up with timely plays. 12 points against 12 points against Union Modoc. Excuse me. I don't know what happened there. She had 13 points against Westdale. She had 12 points against Blackhawk Christian. Right, so those were just a couple of games that we highlight in terms of Bevins' scoring there. A couple of times where she was able to hit some threes, but usually they were no more than 2 threes in a game. One thing that Erica Bevins can work on is be able to become a consistent knockdown shooter. When possible, we don't expect Erica Bevins to be a great three-point shooter, but she did make 23s on 86 attempts, so there is potential that next season she can become a more consistent three-point shooter. And then obviously, she was a selfless player, always helping, getting teammates involved, getting the offense rolling, and helping to feed the ball inside. And then obviously, just like Davis, she is a defensive specialist. She is so good at being able to get to the ball handler and get stops, get steals, and cause havoc for opposing teams. And that is something that Southern Wells is going to hang their hats on going into next season. And then Ellie DeWeese is one other name to watch. Didn't play really that much this year for Southern Wells. That's a name to watch. Kayla Koppel, she's going to be a junior next year. That's another one to watch as well. Cadence Watkins going to be a sophomore. Aubrey Meyer is going to be a junior next season. And she averaged around 2 points per game for Southern Wells. You have Gracie Reeves, just a junior this year. She's going to be a senior next year. Could be another name right there to watch out for Southern Wells. Remy Holmes, going to be a junior, 5'8" junior for the Raiders. Kaya Thomas, a junior guard, going to be a senior next year. Lilia Patson, just a sophomore, going to be a junior next year. So they do have a lot of pieces to work with for the Raiders. But again, when it comes to Southern Wells and when it comes to that sense of consistency, Southern Wells has struggled at times to find consistent basketball talent. And that is something that we're going to be keeping an eye on next year is how do the Raiders adjust from having to graduate Ashley Nealer, Kenzie Patson, and Kalina Reeves. And that's where we get to our pros and cons. Some pros for next season. Experience. This is an experienced team, but it's still a young team. So while they're going to be an experienced team, they bring back a lot of players that played significant minutes, especially in key moments, key postseason games, key tournament games, key conference games. That experience is huge for a school as small as Southern Wells. They are still a young team, though, so they still have 2, maybe even 3 years to work with for most of these players at Southern Wells. Some of that youth, however, can be seen as a con just because some of these younger players that are going to be playing a larger role did not play a whole lot this year. So that is one thing that could be kind of a challenge as well, is getting some of the other younger players to adapt to the varsity level. That could be a challenge at first for Southern Wells. Again, with the Raiders, this is an extremely scrappy team. One of the scrappiest teams you're going to find in this area. Again, defense was a key part of Southern Wells' success. This is a team that averaged 14.7 steals per game. And while they do graduate Kalina Reeves and Ashley Nealer, who average 2 steals per game each, they still return what? 2 of their top 4 leaders in steals per game. And Kaylee Davis was their leader in steals at 3.3. Just a freshman, by the way, for the Southern Wells Raiders. So this team should still have that mentality next year of being a tough team to play against because of that scrappiness on the defense side of the ball. There's now a renowned sense of confidence. For the first time in over a decade, there's confidence with this program. For years, the Raiders have struggled with losing seasons. Now, I know they won a sectional at a much later date leading up to this past season. That was a losing record, which, if I recall, that was the 2018 season, if I remember right? Yes, 2018 and 2017 seasons, they both won sectional championships, but they still had a losing record in both seasons. For the first time in over a decade, this team is coming into next season having had a winning season and momentum on their side going into next season. Can they build upon that momentum? That remains to be seen. But for the first time, they're going into offseason with some sense of confidence, having gone with a successful 16-8 season. And because of that renowned confidence, you have a changing culture that's being built with the Southern Wells Raiders. In a school that is very small town, very small school district that struggles to keep talent in Southern Wells. This is very important to have that culture in place for the Southern Wells Raiders. And I think Coach Penrod has done a very nice job of being able to build that culture quickly and immediately for the Southern Wells Raiders. As far as cons go, and I think this is to be expected for Southern Wells, rebounding is going to be a question mark because Southern Wells is graduating 3 of their top 4 leaders in rebounds, including Ashley Nealer and Kalina Reeves. Those 2 players by themselves average 14 of their 30.2 rebounds per game. That's nearly half of all their rebounds per game. Most of Southern Wells' success this year came on the offensive glass. So if the Raiders are going to find that success next season, they're going to have to be able to have players that are able to replicate some of that success next season and still be able to crash the boards. That is going to be a key part of whether Southern Wells can replicate some of their success next season. The shooting numbers are going to have to be much better next season. While the Raiders showed success on defense and in terms of their interior scoring, Southern Wells only shot 34% from the floor and only shot 20% from 3. That is going to have to improve next year. If the Raiders are going to be a more competitive team next year, they got to make sure that their shooting numbers are more in the lines of a 38% from the floor and a 28% from 3. Because otherwise, better teams are going to expose those weaknesses. And that is one thing that Southern Wells did struggle when injuries started to become a little bit more problematic for Southern Wells towards the end of the season was the shooting numbers, the shooting woes were exposed late in the season. That is something that a young team like Southern Wells is going to have to work on going into next season. And then free throw shooting, 58% of the foul line. This was a team that was built around their post players, so the 58% of the foul line is maybe just a little bit of an overstatement. It doesn't really tell you everything about this team, but I think there is certainly room to improve for Southern Wells. And so if they can get that number to around 65% from the foul line, at the very least, I think they're in a better shape there. But again, that con right there is not as big of an issue as the rebounding and shooting numbers. And then, of course, the turnovers. One other area that got exposed late in the season was turnovers became more problematic. This team averaged This team averaged 18.4 turnovers per game. For a team that won 16 games, you wouldn't have thought they turned the ball over 18 times per game. This team turned over 18 times per game and still won 16 games. Now, you could say, well, their schedule wasn't the best. And maybe that is true. But if you're going to have similar success next year, those turnovers have got to get better. You've got to cut that number down to around 15 or less. Because otherwise, come next season, with a team that's going to be a little bit more depleted in the post, the turnover numbers are going to have to be better. Or otherwise, come next season, I think you will see a slower start, because if they don't take care of the basketball well, they don't shoot the ball well, if they can't find that same level of success on the glass, having to replace Needler and Reeves and Patson, Kenzie Patson, Ashton Needler, and Kalina Reeves, the Raiders are going to have more challenges next year. Now, again, to kind of wrap things up with the Raiders, there's a renowned culture with the program. There's confidence with the team. You do have pieces to work with. You have some youth that will be there for the next couple of years with the Raiders, or at least on paper they will be. But I think there are going to be some question marks as they lose Needler, as they lose Kenzie Patson, as they lose Kalina Reeves. They're going to have to be able to plug in players on different roles, higher levels of expectations for some of these players, and they're going to have to be able to continue to move forward to keep this program competitive and staying as relevant as possible in the ACAC.